direction. Just look around and find at least something good. All you need will come to you. I'll never end you still.
Welcome back to Two Canadians at Kafe Lise, a Vigor podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anton, and with me is...
DJ Spencer.
There we go. We're off to a great start.
Yeah.
Episode 13. Today we're going to be talking about the current featured map, which is Sagbruk. So this season they decided that they were going to switch up the featured map, and they don't even call it featured map anymore. It's just the third map every couple weeks. And so they've given it a 2-week counter now. When the season started, it was Diverg Forest. And this couple weeks as we're recording and when we release this, it is Sagbruk. So yeah, we thought we would delve into that map, and I figure it's going to be a long season. So as we come up with topics, we'll get maybe a couple of these map reviews or talks done at the same time. So yeah, should be good, because this is one of those interesting ones. It took me a long time to get used to this map. When it first came out, I played it a couple times, but I could never really get the feel for it. But now it's like one of my favorite maps. Really good if you're a looter. Like if you're a looter and if you're looking for even specific loots, you can find quite a bit in this map. But for all that it has, it's also not a huge map. It doesn't take you long to run from one end to the other, really, if you're booking it. Not like some of the other ones that, like, if you think something like Grontheim, where if you're starting at the bottom, it'd take you the whole match to run from the bottom all the way to the top if you tried to. Whereas this one, you could do it in just a few minutes. You could get from the bottom to maybe the midpoint, and then a couple more minutes to the other side. So it's not too bad. It's a nicely balanced. It's a smaller map. It's only an 8-person lobby, so it's one of the smaller ones that way too. When we were talking about it, it first came out. It was just a shootout map when it was first released. So it was just covering the central part of the map, which was the sawmill area. And it still is. If you go to shootout, that's what you're playing in. It's the central sawmill portion.
Yeah.
A little different from the encounter version. Like they look identical because they have a lot of the same buildings, but there's different layouts, right? Just I think they have made it so it's easier to get on roofs in the shootout version, because there's a lot of areas that you can climb up on roofs where you can't in the encounter version.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Also, when it first came out in Shootout first released in Season 3, which was Rivals, and that was before I started playing it. You started in Season 3, I believe?
Yeah, right at the tail end. It was like the last 2 weeks.
Right, okay. So did you play any Shootout back then, or were you avoiding it?
I honestly think I played like 1 or 2 games. I focused more on the encounters because I needed the loot, right?
Yeah.
And I think back then the only reward was like XP and a little bit of food. If I recall correctly. I'm not 100% sure, but like, so it didn't really benefit me to grind shootout.
No,
like it kind of did last season or 2 seasons ago.
Right, yeah, because when I started, which was Season 4, part of it was, I don't know if they made any changes, but it was very much the same. You got a little bit of food if you finished within a certain, I think it was like 50 food if you finished within the top. And at that time, was it 10 or 12 people? It might have been 10 people. And then they eventually shrunk it down to 8.
Yeah, it was 10 or 12. I don't remember there, but
yeah. But yeah, it was like if you finished within the top 6 or something like that, I think you got like 50 food. And then if you finished in the topper tiers, you got some experience as well. So yeah, the rewards weren't great, but people, I think, just liked it because it was a big run around shootout that you kept respawning in.
Yeah.
But then in Season 5, they released it as a full map, and then they had really built up around the map, giving it lots of quite a bit of exploration, like quite a bit of forest, and there's a lot of roads and railways, and really opened it up, and it was a really nice change. But
Hmm.
again, it still took me a long time to get into it. I played a few rounds because I think when it first started out, whenever there's a new map, it tends to get really sweaty. I think like the new maps tend to get really sweaty at first, and then things sort of
Yeah,
calm down and then spread out a bit more, and people start
yeah,
congregating to their favorite maps for whatever type of play they want. And now I really love it because I know there's always, depending on where I start on the map, for looting anyways, I know there's always a route I want to take to try to get the optimal loot I can. If I'm going for loot, if I'm going for more confrontations, then yeah, then I might change it up a bit. But
mhm,
yeah, it's just a good all around map for sure. So yeah, when we're going to be putting up um, screen captures of it as we're talking, sort of like we did on previous when we covered other maps in the past. So when we talk about a certain section, I'll pop it up and it'll be kind of highlighted where I'm talking about, so you know as well. This is an interesting map too because it's a small, 8-person map, so it's not a huge map. And like as I said before, you can run from one side of the map to the other in a short amount of time. But there's a lot of points of interest scattered around this map. For such a little map, there's a lot of like
yep,
a lot of points. So there's 17 points of interest. Most of and a lot of them, there's not much at each one. So we'll
yep,
we'll talk about some of them, and it might take 10 minutes to talk about one, but then it would just take a couple seconds to talk about another. So
yep,
we'll do our best though as we go through it to try to point out anything that we think is relevant for a particular location. So
yep.
why don't you start us on our first one?
So the first one we're going to start at the bottom right, which is the eastern side.
Yeah,
It's the Fisherman's Village. Now, in all the game, I want to say this is probably my favorite loot spot.
yeah,
Kind of like when I go back to before season 5, when the guest house on Victorson Station had the best loot in all of the game.
yeah.
I think this is the one spot you want to really hit.
Hmm.
You could get up to like 3 lockboxes in this location. There's signal towers that does spawn there. Um, you get basically like almost every type of resource you need.
Pretty much.
There's like
Yeah.
electronics, glass, chemicals, nails, metal parts, like pretty much everything.
Sometimes
Um,
fertilizer, but not very often. Fertilizers, I think, is the one that you might see it once in a while, like near the telephone booth, if I'm not mistaken. But then
uh,
not very often.
yeah, down by
Oh,
that last shed, the red
yep.
shed too.
That's right, by the
Um,
red shed and the shed beside it, or the little house that's beside
yeah,
that red shed. Sometimes by the fire pit, there's also fertilizer. So yeah, it does have
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
yeah, like everything. It is fantastic.
Hmm.
There's a cash spot just outside of it.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you keep going along the shore, there's like another boat um, on the shore, like a rocky shore, and there's a bunch of chemicals there.
Hmm.
And then if you just go north from that boat, there's like a feeder, and
Yep.
then you get chemicals, um, or there is sometimes a lockbox in there as well, and fertilizer and food. So like it honestly, like this is one of my favorite spots
Hmm.
in the whole game. Um, However, there is potentially 2 spawn points right in there, like on opposite sides.
Yep.
And then there's like a couple of other spawns just like a stone's throw away from it. So like it can get busy quickly.
Yeah, so
So
it's definitely one that if you're starting there, be careful. You're is for sure someone else is going to be starting near it. Now, whether they're interested in the loot or not is the thing. Like quite, if you get somebody who's more interested in combat, quite often they're going to run towards the central area of the map. I
yeah,
find like it's the more combat oriented people are hitting central. Um,
unless signals is there,
well,
because
unless
they'll
signals is
push
there.
there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
they'll
true.
push signals and then they'll head towards the middle. But
Hmm.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, it is a fantastic spawn point. And yeah, you can pretty much get, and you have an exit right there too. So it's a good it's a good starting point, but it's also a good ending point sometimes. Like if I find I'm starting somewhere else on the map, I like to funnel my way to this location just in case whoever started there wasn't interested in it and they were heading more inwards. Or sometimes it didn't get everything. Like people sometimes run through really quickly, grab a bunch of loot, and take off, or head somewhere else, and so they might leave something behind. And so I like to check it out just to be sure.
Yep.
And the vehicles quite often don't get touched because people are always afraid of setting off the car alarms. So you can
Yep.
usually get some stuff out of the vehicles too.
Oh yeah, and that's one thing about Sagbruk too is like the vehicles. Like there's nothing like the radio mass truck on battery,
No.
but like I find the reward of actually searching through vehicles to get like those high end consumables, it's usually worth it.
Yeah.
Because like you'll get the ports, mortar strikes,
Yeah, you can find all that
know,
stuff. It's just it won't be in one
yeah,
vehicle like you said, like in
yeah,
battery. It's going to be
exactly,
spread out.
yeah,
So and if there's a railway crossing not far from this village, and there's a bunch of vehicles in that crossing, and
yep,
quite often you'll find those things in those vehicles there.
yep,
Yeah.
and that leads us to our next POI.
Yeah, next one is just up north from this one. So if you're, it's almost directly north. It's called
Yep.
Camping Disaster. There's not a lot in Camping Disaster. It's usually just a couple camping weapon crates, but nearby
Mhm.
there's also a few good loot points. So yeah, there can be up to two weapon crates. With sometimes you'll find like just some basic weapons. If you're lucky, you might find an M2 carbine, but quite often you're going to find maybe a pistol or a Thompson or something like that.
Mhm.
So not the highest end guns, but if you're
Yep.
doing a loot run if you're ever going in naked, um, then this is a good place to run because at least you're for sure going to. I shouldn't say for sure. There's a high chance you're going to get a weapon here.
Yep.
There are times you go there and there's like nothing. So,
Yeah.
you know. But not far from this one, just up the path a little bit and to the north, is a little. I think it's like a wood, sort of like a little wood enclosure kind of
Yep.
setup, and in there you can find a couple chemicals sometimes and nails, a couple red toolboxes full of nails. So that's not far from the Camping Disaster. And then also not far from there, if you go towards the road, not far from Camping Disaster, there can quite often there's a diggy hole. Not far from there, you find some downed, like some
Hmm.
bundled logs, and there's the diggy hole or a
Yeah.
buried cache right there. And usually across the road from there, you can find some chemicals or fertilizer, that kind of stuff.
Which which is technically the next POI, Forest Nursery.
Yeah, I guess it is technically. Yeah, so I sort of jumped it there because
Yeah.
they're very close to each other. Like those chemicals I was talking about aren't quite at Forest
It-
Nursery, but
yeah.
yeah, I know
They're
what
in
you mean.
between.
They're right. They're kind of right in between. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
talk about Forest Nursery. There's not much to talk about in Forest Nursery, but go for
No, yeah,
it.
there's like a small little like
Yeah.
open air shed. You'll get fertilizer, chems, and then there's a couple of like walking paths, and then same thing.
Yeah.
You could either find fertilizer or chems there. Um, I like to kind of head south for that boat along the shore and hit that feeder. That's like one of my looting
Yeah.
trails. But yeah, there is a dig spot there too. I'm just not always very adept at finding
Finding
it.
them, yeah. There's a few dig spots not far from this forest one, like that feeder you were talking about before. Sort of in
Yep.
between this spot and that
Yes.
feeder is the railway, and right on that railway there's a dig spot. And there's
Yep.
also a couple little lootable, some floor loot, like some like maybe a wire
Wire.
box and,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing around there. And
Yep.
also not far from here, um, this forest nursery is sort of like a raised hill part, and it has like right between it a path that you can run through. But then there's these
Mhm.
like sort of like little bit the teeny cliffs right above this path that you run through, and this is all like not near the mountains. This is like right by this location. You'll see there's a tree that's sort of like a log or a tree sort of fallen across the top of these, and on top of these there's another buried location. So, and that
Yeah.
one can be kind of tricky to find. If you get to find the picture of it, there's always a picture, and it looks like two logs that are like crossed, but across a little chasm, and that's right here. And that's one of the buried locations that I try to get to sometimes to check.
Yeah.
And what's next? I think next is that
Derailed Train.
yeah. Go ahead with the Derailed Train. Yeah.
Well, I just did Nursery,
Oh,
so
you
if
did
you want
Nursery, so I get to do it. Okay.
to.
I talked a lot about Nursery too, though. So okay, so, Derailed Train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sort of just to the west of this forest nursery on the train tracks is what's called Derailed Train, and it's obvious. There's a bunch of trains that are sort of scattered, train cars that are scattered in a weird kind of setup. On these train cars, you can find stuff like sometimes there'll be a few lootable containers on these train cars themselves.
Mhm.
And then sometimes the locked container will spawn on one of these cars, one of these flatbed cars. But then there's one section that's sort of where the cars are separated and one's sort of going off one way and the rest are on the track still. And in that little area, which they call the derailed train, is where there's a cache spot.
Mhm.
So there's like one right sort of in the middle of that like grassy area right there. But then yeah, there's also metal parts and wire all around that area in various little locations that you can loot. But that's about it. There's not a
Yeah.
lot here, but you're close to a lot, and it's a spawn point,
Yeah.
so you can
Yeah.
spawn there, and so you're close to
There's
a
a
lot of
red
different
crate
things.
too on one of the flatbeds
That's
too.
true. That can be a red crate. Yeah, yeah, a potential airdrop in a red crate. Yeah, and then going from
Uh,
there.
Seating on a cliff, so that's right um, along the water.
Yeah,
It's a little campsite. There's a couple of benches. You'll usually get fuel, and um, there's a spawn. That's one of the spawn points near that locked exit.
yeah,
You could also, if you're looking for the fire troll,
he'll
it
spawn there.
has spawned there before,
Yeah.
um, but not if you're looking to get out of that locked exit. It's definitely one place you definitely want to check out
Hmm.
to see if it was looted because fuel there is fuel on Sagbruk, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So this is definitely one of those places you want to try to get to. Um, Otherwise, you might have to like loot one of the safes
Yeah, safe or take your
or
chance with
locked into.
vehicles. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
trying to find the fuel you need to open this locked exit. It's the only locked exit on the map, but it needs fuel.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's
yeah.
five
It needs
fuel, so
five.
it's not a lot, but it's still if you don't have it, you're not getting out.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's one of the smaller. There's not a lot there, but yeah, it's definitely
No.
a good little one. And then right next to it, right at that locked exit, is the next point of interest, which is the workers' quarters. And it's
Hmm.
just a series of I guess it's like what do you call those like it's a camp, it's like a
Yeah.
almost like a it looks sort of almost like a summer camp kind of those kind of what do they call them like
Here they're called portables. Like we have them for school type thing,
yeah, they're
but
kind of like portables,
I
but
don't know.
yeah, I don't know, but they're like where people sort of sleep and whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have a specific name. Camps aren't really a huge thing here,
like a
so it's
trailer type thing.
yeah, but it's like their wood camps that are set up or
Yeah,
whatever, like sleeping areas, sleeping bunks
yeah.
or whatever you want to call them. Bunks is probably a good way to call them too. But there's about six maybe. I think there's about six of them, three in a row and then three in a row. You can find quite a bit around them. You'll find
Hmm.
chemicals around them, wire, nails. Inside them, you can find stuff as well. Quite often, Bard House can show up here in one of them where you have to break in, and then Bard is right there. Um, yeah, but that's essentially it. You'll find chemicals littered around it
Yeah,
and various other metals, like little
yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah,
There's
so
there's some consumable containers, and there's a spawn point too, just so the opposite
yeah,
side of like the seating on a cliff type thing. So there's one really close by too.
yeah,
As
yeah. And just north of this, before our next one, it's sort of in the clearing. There can be buried cache. So there's like a
Mhm.
fence before this next POI we talk about. There's a buried cache in the clearing, sort of the grassy area. right there too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that brings us to, I guess, if you want to call it kind of like a sawmill compound. So the actual sawmill area.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the Sawmill Shed. So this is the L-shaped building. So there's 2 stories. You could get up onto the roof by jumping onto, like you go up the catwalk, and then you jump onto like there's some wood crates, and then you jump into the opening in the roof.
Yeah.
Um, and then you could kind of jump around to the other roof, and then you could actually get around um, like the bottom part of the L if you walk alongside of the roof line.
Mm-hmm.
So you get onto the opposite side. Um,
It's like almost like
there,
two connected buildings, like because it's like two
yeah,
buildings that are sort of connected with a little inside passageway, but then you can go underneath too when you're outside.
it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Um, and in there, like really, you can get like metal parts, nails, wires. Like a lot of this map, you're going to find those basic
Mm-hmm.
resources. There's a red airdrop crate in there as well. Um, there's also time safe is there
Yep.
um, on occasion, um,
And it can
and
spawn a couple different places in there too. So like the main
yeah,
safe, it could be like there's these catwalks inside. The main safe can be on the catwalk. The main safe can be on
yep,
the lower level of one of the buildings in the corner. It's a few different locations within this one building that time safe can show up.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
and like some of the switches are kind of tricky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like some are, it's quite a run, and it's like I swear I'm just making that like 20-second mark for them to like reset type thing.
Yeah.
um but yeah, and aside from that, there's vehicles around, so you'll get electronics and wire from them as well, and then around there too, there's signals
Hmm.
that does spawn there, and I believe on like the northern part, sometimes there's disruptor tower too,
Yeah.
if I'm
Sometimes
not
disruptor
mistaken,
tower.
along the fence,
Yeah. And
right?
also, just outside of that building, in that little white two-story building,
Oh
is a
yeah,
comm station.
yeah. With the office, I almost want to call it like the office building, but
Because it seems like it's an
uh,
office, because there's some
yeah,
cabinets in there. There's a phone in there, a big hole in the
yeah.
side. I don't know. Something happened. I don't know what, but yeah. And just
Nice and
outside
blue.
of outside of that, there's a couple different areas that are buried caches as well. So like there's the stairs that go up to this little office we're talking about, but not on the other side of the stairs. There's like a little gap in the fence, and by that gap in the fence, there's a dig spot, and I think there's another one not far from there too. So there's a couple different dig spots I think close by. But then that takes us to our next one, which is the main sawmill main building. The main sawmill
Hmm.
main building. The sawmill main building. um, which building has the typing on it too, like the words on it?
Oh, like what we were talking about before?
Yeah.
It's the L-shaped building.
Okay. On the L-shaped building, there's some like family Sawbruk
Yeah,
lettering on the side of it. Yeah, that's right. But on the main sawmill building, it's like that's like the big construction building. So when you go into it, that's where they're cutting the logs. They're bringing the logs through the water to this building, kind of thing. It's a neat setup. It's a nice building. It has a few different levels to it. There's like a bottom level where all the generators are, or the big machinery, which also has like the indoor outhouses, because they're like outhouses
yeah,
but they're inside,
yeah.
which you can actually go through. One of them has the floor broken out, and you can go down into it and get out the bottom. And in the bottom area is where you can find a dig spot. But inside this big main building, Bard can show up here. The time safe can show up here in a few different locations again.
Yeah.
So it can be in different areas of it. Bard can be on the bottom level, but it can also be on the top level too. And what's interesting is when it's on the very top level, there's no actual breaking into Bard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can just run up the stairs and there's
Oh.
the safe.
I have not had that one ever.
I have. I've had it
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
at least once, maybe a couple times. I've had it a few times where I've run up the
Okay.
stairs and there's the safe right there. So it's like no breaking into it. All the other
Yeah.
versions of Bard in this map you have to break into, but this is the one
Yeah.
spot in the very top, and maybe because it takes you so much just to get up there. It's not
Yeah.
huge, Bard, but if there's a lot of people around, it could be perilous. But from that top level, which could be barred. It could also be the time safe. There's a bunch of lootable containers in there. You can get a lot of glass there. So if you're looking for
Yeah.
glass, that's a good location to go to, because there's a
Yeah.
couple different locations that have up to 20 glass or so.
Yeah.
There's a weapon crate quite often, maybe two. There's roof access from up there. Two different areas where you can get onto the roof of that big building. Um, and yeah, you can pretty much find most of your common materials, like metal
Hmm.
parts, wire, and nails for sure. There's a red crate, a potential red crate can
Hmm.
spawn there, um, and all the different things like comms, signals can spawn nearby, just to the north of it a little bit, in along the fenced area, just on the other side, near I guess the exit or the end of the whole sawmill
You
area.
mean signals?
That's what I meant. What did I say?
I thought I heard you say comms.
I might have, because comms can
Okay.
spawn here, but then I might have been talking about signals and
Yeah.
forgot to say signals. But signals can spawn right close to it.
Yeah. All three of them, really.
All of them, yeah. The disruptive tower, yeah, they all spawn right here. So yeah, you can get onto the roof. You can get to the roof of the building next to it. So there's a lot of roof access, and this is where you have to be careful when you're on this map. If you're ever near this area, always keep your eye on the roofs, because there's a lot of people who like to snipe, and so
Yeah.
look out for snipers on the roofs. Or if you're the sniper, well, good place to snipe. um, there's also not at this location. I mentioned the dig spot underneath the building, but just to the north of the building, still within the compound, sort of by the big entrance. There's like the vehicle entrance that's right there, and
Mhm.
signals can be there. There's also another dig spot, which can happen just right by the rail, like close to the entrance near the rails. There's a dig spot there too.
Okay.
And then that takes us to
There's
oh
actually like a really good loot spot too, just outside of it. Like there's a little crane house,
oh yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah,
just to the left. Lots of chemicals there, and like you said, the common stuff, but like the chems there are really good.
yeah,
And then if you follow, if you look across from the crane building, because it's almost on an elevated platform,
yeah.
there's like a drainage pipe. If you follow that pipe into the woods, there's also like another like little shed type. I don't know what you want to
Oh,
call it.
I know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I
but
know that, like, wood collection areas or something. I don't know what they're
yeah,
called.
I
Yeah,
I don't know what you want. It's like
yeah.
an outhouse, but it's not an outhouse. But
No, yeah,
anyways, yeah, you can get more chems there, and
yeah,
that's like another part of like my chem looting run type thing, right?
yep.
Um,
And that
so
also reminds me, is before you head into the woods at that location you're talking about, that little shed where the crane kind of thing is can also be a bard house.
yes,
Yeah, there's only
yes,
one entrance you have to open, but it's weird because the windows are all fully open. You don't break into them, but you can't go through them either. So there's only
okay.
one entrance and exit out of this little bard house if it's the bard house, and it could be really like you get in there and you might be trapped in there because if other people are running around outside, it's
Yeah.
like, oh crap, how do I?
Yeah, it's pretty open, right? Like
It is. It's
you're
very open.
literally on an elevated platform, and there's just this little shack.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So yeah, that's that whole little area right around the sawmill. Yeah.
yeah. Next would be the house near the railway, which is just north of the sawmill shed that I spoke about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Um,
It's sort of
so
central on the map.
yeah, it's almost like a central point. It's weird that it's called house near the
Yeah.
railway because as Doc pointed out before stream, he's like, there's no actual home. It's like a tool shed and like a garden shed type thing. So it's
Yeah.
like,
And a lean-to area right beside them, and
yeah,
yeah,
like a
but there's
picnic
like no
area.
house.
But
Yeah.
you can get a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
Um, Fertilizer, metal parts, nails. Um, there's like toolboxes you could loot inside. There can be a lockbox.
Hmm.
There's time safe and bard house that can spawn there, which like I have
Sometimes at
not
the same
played.
time.
Yeah, at the same time now with the way it is, and it's like I haven't been to one of those locations yet, but oh my God, like I could just you hear
Hmm.
the shooting almost instantaneously
Yep.
because a lot of people are trying to get there. But it's definitely like a good spot to go to because there's a lot of good loot.
Yep.
You could also find the disruptor tower there as well,
Yep.
and there's a couple of vehicles there that you probably want to check because again, the consumables that you could actually get. I've gotten like portables and mortar strikes out of them, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really good for that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And then just to the east of this, so it's, yeah, right from this one, almost directly east is one called the Tourist's Rest. And it's a little one, but it quite often it's very common for it to have a comm station. So quite often there'll be a comm station there, and for consumables you'll find chems. Sometimes there'll be um, a medicine kit. Could be like parts usually, if it has one. But it might have a little bit of floor loot to pick up. But comms is quite often there. So that's the main thing that
yeah,
you'll find in that location. And then not far from it, like there's sort of it's not far from the mid exit. So there's a mid
yeah,
mountain exit, and that's right just to the east of this is sort of that exit, not too far.
yeah. And there's like a lock container too that kind of like spawns nearby there too,
Yeah,
like along that road,
on
right
the
by the
road.
exit.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned the chems though, right? At
Yep.
the tourist rest. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
pretty sure I did anyways. I'm pretty sure
Okay,
we
I
mentioned
kind
there's
of like
chems.
drifted off there for like 2 seconds
That's
there.
okay. Yeah.
Um, so I guess after that, we're going to the Hyde Overlook, which is a little bit kind of northwest of the tourist
It's
rest.
very close to it.
Um,
It's only this far away on the
and
map.
yeah, they're super close, but
Yeah.
it's funny because this place here, this POI, there isn't a whole lot. I like there's a watchtower which
Yep.
has I think weapon crates, um,
Sometimes. Yep.
and sometimes there's signal towers, but aside from that, there's
Not
not
a
a whole
lot of
lot.
loot.
Sometimes there's food around, but
Yeah.
like honestly, like as the bushes,
Yep.
not like actual containers. I know there's like a cache spot along some of the logs,
Yeah.
but aside from that, there's not a whole lot.
No. Near that cache spot you're talking about, quite often you can find maybe some nails. There might be a red box of nails there. If you go the opposite direction south from this, closer to that exit, along the road you can find stuff sometimes. Like near that exit on the
Mhm.
road, you can find food. You can find a weapon crates. Across the road from that exit, you can find there's another dig spot, sort of in a Y section of the road. Right in the Y part, there can be a dig spot, and then also near some logs, there can be some more loot. So along that whole road, you can find stuff as you're going. But yeah, right at that specific location, yeah, not a lot.
Yeah.
That's true. But then going north from here, there'll be some stairs that go up right by it, and then you're in a sort of an elevated area, and that takes you to the foreman's house. Um, and that one's actually a really good loot spot too. Not as good as
Hmm.
Fisherman's Village, but pretty good.
Yeah.
There's a potential for a lockbox to spawn here, and there's two different locations they can spawn, either in the garage or on the balcony.
Hmm.
There's a lot of loose loot around. You can find fuel, you can find nails, you can find wire, metal all around it. In the garage, you can also find metal and nails and all that kind of stuff in those drawers. There's a car parked right outside of the house, and by that car there'll be some loose stuff. But then in the car there can be stuff as well. Around the house there's loose loot, like different
Yeah.
containers you can do. And then in the house is usually decent. You can find glass and fertilizer and various kinds of things within the house. Quite often you can find a picture in there too. And
Yeah.
then if you're lucky, as I mentioned, on the balcony can be the lock container. So yeah, that's a really good little. And there's a diggy hole too, right outside the back entrance of the garage,
Yeah.
there in the corner. there's a potential diggy spot right there. And
Yeah.
then just down those stairs from the location back towards the road is a couple vehicles. There's like an RV and a car, and they can usually have something, and there might be a few containers around them. So all in all, it's really good. Not quite as big as like Fisherman's Village, but there's a lot of loot in that little dense spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like one of the desirable spawn points that you want to have because literally
Yeah,
like you're if you spawn there, it's like you're just right at the top of the rock and you literally walk right down and you're there. So
yeah, yeah.
it's definitely a good one. And then next one would be so if you go across the road, just a little bit south, it's called the Forest Clearing.
Hmm.
Um, and this is literally what it sounds like. It's
It's yeah,
like a
cleared area.
hillside, and
Yeah.
yeah, they cut down a bunch of trees. There's not a whole lot of stuff. There's like some nail boxes by like a truck, and then a little bit here and there. And then there's a couple of cache spots, one by the truck, and
Hmm.
then the other one Doc was telling me
It's
just
down
before.
more, yeah, in the cleared area, and
Yeah,
if you don't know exactly where to look, you'd be looking around forever trying to find it. If you have the
yeah,
picture, then it helps.
yeah, for sure. But again, like this is another one of those um, POIs that there's not a whole
Yeah.
lot. There is a spawn point here.
Hmm.
Um, typically, like if I get this spawn point, I'll actually push to Foreman's house
Yeah.
just because I want to make sure that no one is behind me, type thing, and then kind of
Yeah.
work my way down.
And there
So,
can by the truck that's right by here, there can quite often be chemicals too. So chemicals do
okay,
spawn there quite often.
okay, good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. And then going from forest clearing, we're going to go sort of south again, closer to the road, and that is what's called the storage shed, and it's kind of a little weird one. It's more of like a lean-to system or whatever, where they have like the slanted roof and all that. There's some vehicles around there. The lock container can spawn on the road right there, so it can be a really
Hmm.
desirable location. Com station is quite often there. But then you can find a lot of different miscellaneous loot, like metal, nails, and toolboxes and that kind of thing right around there. Not a lot of like maybe you might find some fertilizer. I can't remember for sure, but it's mostly going to be the gray loot that's in that
Yeah.
area. But right by there is the cave walkthrough, and sometimes you might find a picture that has this cave in it. And if you don't use the cave a lot, it can be really hard to remember where is this cave. And it's right by here. So right behind this location is the little cave passageway, and it starts right by here, and it goes through and it ends near the sort of like little dirt road on the other side of this little forested area. And then within that cave, you can find like the cave troll sometimes.
Yeah.
You can find, I think there's a red box. Is there a red box
Yeah.
around here? Yeah,
Yeah. There is
there's a
kind of in
red
the middle.
box. There's a buried location on the other side of the cave, right near the entrance, and then other various types of floor loot you can find right around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and you'll take us to the next one, but on the way to the next one, there's various locations where you can find loot. Um, yeah,
Yes. After that is well, next is destroyed power pole, which yeah, it almost you kind of want to think of it as uh like a power station.
yeah,
I think of it as it because there's like a transformer box and there's like the same type of building as you find at the workers area
yeah,
workers quarters
yeah,
and there like you get chemicals sometimes you'll find like weapon parts or like an actual weapon out of the
yeah,
crate um so you'll get electronics, wire, metal parts. I think there's no nails, but there's two. There might be nails,
might be.
but I know there's
Yeah,
usually two metal part like containers
yeah,
there, and there's a truck there as well.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I think that's it for
yeah.
destroyed power.
Pretty close. And then just right near the entrance to this, like there's like a little path that goes up to it. On that path, sort of before the fence, there's a group of rocks, and by that group of rocks is another buried location.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a buried location on the way to this, sort of. Yeah. But
Oh,
then,
okay,
yeah,
that's good to know.
yeah. If you have the picture for that one, you can sort of see the shed that you were talking about. That's in this. You can see
Oh,
it in the picture,
okay,
and sort of like that's sort of the clue that, oh, I know where this is. I see that shed, and it's right by this rock. Yeah. But just
okay, got it.
just exactly south of destroyed power pole is what they call cabin in the woods. The guys, they love their movies, and this is a good reference for it.
Like, yeah, like the horror movie
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Oh my
I
god.
love that movie. But yeah, Cabin in the Woods. It's another really good. It's a starting location. Like there's a few. There's actually a lot of spawn points in this area, because there's
Yeah,
spawn points not far from in the power pole area. There's spawn points right by this Cabin in the Woods. So there's
yeah,
a few right around this area. So if you're ever starting there, be aware that you may not be alone. Um,
yeah.
but there's a lot in this because this can be everything. It can have signals, it can have a comm station, it can have. I'm not sure if it have disruptive or yeah, I think it might.
No,
No, or at least close
I
by.
don't. I don't.
There might be a disruptive close by to here. I know it's been covered by disruptive a few times.
Okay,
I'm not sure where disruptive can be, but I think it's close by. Um,
okay.
but yeah, and I've seen it also now that we have two loot events. I've seen both loot events be here.
Hmm.
Bard House and Time Safe can both spawn
Yeah,
here. And there's a pond right beside it. So just to the north or just to the east of it, there's like a little pond that has some good chemicals and fertilizer right around that pond. There's
yep.
nails and wire and I think metal that can all spawn in around vehicles and just around the building itself. Um, and inside the building, of course, it's a typical house, so you can find all your usual stuff, glass, fertilizer, all that kind of stuff. You can have a lockbox within there as well. And sometimes I've seen it where time safe is there and a lockbox was in there with time safe. I have seen that at least a couple
Yeah.
times.
I had
So
that
it's a
once where.
huge house.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I had that once where time safe was there. They looted time safe, but they didn't even look at the lockbox.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Oh, jackpot!" I'm like, at least it's a
Yeah.
consolation prize, but
I think the people who do that, like, they're just nervous. Like, oh, this is going to be a hot spot. People are going to be coming here. I'm
yeah,
going to get the time safe and get out.
yeah,
So I think that's usually what it is. Like they don't want to spend too much time missing with a lock.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Um, After that, brings us to our last one, destroyed dreams, which is like it's like a burnt down building or collapsed
yeah,
building, um, and basically there's not a whole lot there. It's like
no,
maybe the odd weapon crate, one or two, um,
yeah.
and that's it. Like I think I've
Fuel
seen a
sometimes.
troll there. Oh,
Yeah,
see, I haven't. I think I might have seen like metal parts there once, but it's not
yeah.
consistent. Um,
And the fuel's not consistent either. If I see fuel there, there's the two houses, and the house that's more to the west, like the furthest west house. I've
yeah.
seen fuel on the barrel that's right there, and sometimes in the
Okay.
house, like against the wall inside the house, just on the other side of the entrance. Sometimes it can be
Okay.
fuel there too, and there's a buried
Okay.
cache there too,
Yeah.
underneath the
I
walkway. Yeah.
Okay. And there's like I know there's like the odd troll that spawns there too.
Hmm.
Um, Now there is one location. It's kind of like between Destroyed Dreams and Cabin in the Woods. If you go like right on the edge of the map, it's like a little tent city. There's like three or four tents. There's a
Oh,
spawn point there.
okay.
There's actually like consumables there and a couple of like
Oh,
lootable containers.
I know what you're talking about.
Um,
Yep.
that I forgot to add that to the notes.
Yeah, yep.
That's my bad.
That's good.
But yeah, it's kind of like there's a spawn
Hmm.
point right there. And it's like it's nice because like I don't know how many times I've actually like started um, there and I ended up with like iodine right off the bat, and so it's like
Hmm.
jackpot right there. Because
Yeah.
well, like I know you like to use it. I like to bring it back for materials, but
Well, I only use it if I have to. Like I try to bring it
yeah,
back,
same,
but if there's a lot
same,
of
same.
times where I'm like right on the edge, like I got to use the iodine. But
Mhm.
yeah, and then also not far from there, like we talked about the destroyed power pole, but if you go, there's a power pole just sort of west of the destroyed power pole, sort of in the clearing area above all these POIs we're talking about, there's a power pole.
Hmm.
Just in front of that power pole is like an evergreen, a few evergreen trees, and there's a dig spot right there too, right by those trees.
Okay.
So I try to remember that one. If I'm ever in that area, I'll check it, just because it can be a good chance you might get it.
Yeah.
One spot we haven't really talked about too much is sort of south of Destroyed Dreams, along the shore. We didn't talk about it.
Hmm.
There's a really good loot location along the shore. I know you,
Yeah.
you were thinking of you're getting there.
Yeah. I'm
We
thinking of it too.
Yeah, and it's a great location for fertilizer and chemicals. You'll find a
Yeah.
lot of both, and there's a dig spot there too. So
Yep.
fertilizer, chemicals, and a dig spot. Um, but that's essentially the house. There's or the map, I should say. On this road heading to the last exit, there's quite a few vehicles, and so you can get a lot of good stuff out of those vehicles. If you don't mind braving the alarms, they're worth checking out. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. Is there anything you think?
Um, the only thing I would say is like I like Sagbruk because of the chemicals. Honestly, like
Yeah,
this is probably the best map for chemicals. So when I always come up with a plan um, where depending on the spawn point is come up with like a looting run
yeah,
that that you are comfortable with. So that's the only thing I would say is come up with a plan and kind of stick with it because like even on a non-boosted lobby you could come out with like 150 chemicals if you hit like quite a few of these spots
yeah.
um, but it's a great map because there's a wide range of areas. There's
Hmm.
open areas, there's like wooded areas, you mentioned at the beginning.
Yep.
um, it's very versatile, and you have to watch out because there's a lot of elevations,
Hmm.
and this is one of those maps where it pays to know the map because of all the cliffs and stuff, because sometimes there's stairways up the mountainside, and there might be a quicker way if you actually know how to climb the cliffs. So,
Yep.
know your map and go in with a plan, and hopefully you come out with all the good
Yeah.
stuff that you want.
And it's also good to look at those stairways too, because quite often the stairways will have like nails and like various things along the stairways. So
Yeah,
it's not bad to check them. There's
yeah.
a couple of things we didn't mention. There's one precarious kind of dig spot on this map that is in the
Oh yeah,
middle of the water. So when we're talking
yeah,
about sort of in between Fisherman's Village, well, farther west from Fisherman's Village, but before
yeah.
you get to the one that's
Seating.
called, yeah, the seating on a cliff, there's looks like a little island on the map,
Yeah,
and right in the middle of that island is a dig spot. So if you ever
yeah,
find that picture, just know you're going to be wading through some water, going really slow, and hoping that nobody sees you
yeah.
if you're trying to
Exactly.
get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Honestly, like that is the worst.
yeah.
Well, I
It
don't want
is.
to say the worst, but like,
Man, maybe not.
yeah,
The
that
worst on
that
this
cash
map.
spot
Yeah.
is definitely like the riskiest, probably
Hmm.
in all of Vigor. I want to
Yeah.
say because you are so vulnerable getting to that spot, right?
Hmm.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's also like neat little things you can do in this map which are kind of cool. Like when you're on the shore where that good loot is, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of logs in the water. Well, if you want, you can run across those logs and get to the main sawmill building. So there's like
Yeah.
little things like that that you can take advantage of. So if you ever like if you're stuck in the building and you want to get out, you could run around the logs and hope that nobody sees you, and vice versa. If you need to get to that building in the other side and you want to try to avoid the big open areas, you could run along the logs the other way too. So little things
Yeah.
like that. It was a neat map. It's like the second, was it the second last map they've made? I think
Yeah,
so.
because Anakin was the last one,
Yeah.
and then it was that
Yeah.
the Sagbruk. So
Yeah.
it's funny because I remember when it first came out, and like you mentioned, it got super sweaty, but then I found a lot of people ended up countering it by camping a lot or ambushing people.
Yep.
And so uh So it kind of like died down and it got less popular. And then I just started playing it again, and it wasn't as campy, and I really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah.
um,
That was a big
and
thing. When it
again,
first started, I found it really campy at the time, and yeah, now it's at the point where there might be some camping, but it's yeah, it's very playable. Yeah.
yeah, it's the one thing you have to watch out, like when you're at the main sawmill building, because there's a tree line, and it's a great spot to ambush people like walking out because
Hmm.
the trees are all there and there's a lot of cover. But no, I really enjoy it, especially right now because I'm on the chemical grind. So for the 2 weeks, I'm more than happy to have Sagbruk
Yeah.
around.
No, it's been nice having it there as an option when there's two maps that I'm not really interested in. I know I can go to Sawbruk, so that's nice.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's our review or our overview of the Sagbrook map. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy it. Leave us some comments below. Let us know what you think. How do you feel about this map? Do you enjoy it as much as we do? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. As always, like, share, subscribe. It helps. Gets us out
Yep.
there. Maybe gets more people interested in watching and build more interest in Vigor. Still love the game.
Yep.
But yeah, so we'll see in a couple weeks. We're not sure yet what the next one's going to be, but it'll be something. That's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Anyways, again, I'm Dr. Anton,
And I'm DJ Spencer.
and until next time, have stay safe out in the outlands. Okay.
And delete the cash spot picture.
Yeah, delete the cache. Don't forget to delete the cache spot picture. If you're going to dig that thing up, you need that space. All right. Have a good night.
Night.
I've heard you say you lost your way, lost your way again. You don't see your reflection. Just look around and find at least something good. All you need will come to you. I'll never end you still. Take whatever you want. jets and flares.